Plan Commission meeting of Monday, May 17, 2021. Please rise. Start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Wayne, would you please take roll?
Certainly. Mr. France.
Present.
Mrs. Grabanowski.
Present.
Mr. Jones.
Present.
Mrs. Walker. Mr. Lake.
Present.
Mr. Fedor.
Present.
Mrs. Matter.
Present.
All right, we do have a new member for swearing in tonight. Before we do that, I want to thank George Lewis for his service on the Plan Commission meeting. He'll be missed, but we welcome. Sorry, I've got Cindy
That's okay.
on board. So with that, Wayne, would you please do the swearing in?
Want me to stand or?
Please. Grab a hold of a piece of paper and read with me. You stay right there. That's fine.
Okay.
Administrator, please raise your right hand, please.
Want me to repeat after you or do you just want me to read?
I will, please repeat after me.
Okay.
I, Cindy Matter,
I, Cindy Madrick,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States of America,
that I will support the Constitution of the United States of America,
the Constitution of the State of Indiana,
the Constitution of the State of Indiana,
and the ordinances of the town of Zionsville, Indiana.
and the ordinances of the town of Zionsville, Indiana.
I will faithfully, honestly, and impartially discharge
I will faithfully, honestly, and impartially discharge
all of my official duties as a Plan Commission member for the town of Zionsville, Indiana,
all of my official duties as a member of the Plan Commission for the town of Zionsville, Indiana,
without malice and to the best of my skills and ability.
without malice and to the best of my skills and ability.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
All right, thank you.
Take it from there.
Thank you.
Well, board, look forward to working with you.
Thank you.
In your packet, there was a set of minutes from the April 19th meeting. Is there any comments, additions, deletions to those minutes? If there are none, is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
There's a second?
Second.
And all in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed by nay. Motion carries 6-0. I'm assuming, Cindy, you didn't vote. And then next on the go to business. That continuance request from 2021-12 DP D Altum 795 South US 421. Petition for development plan approval to allow for a storage structure in addition to structures related to a commercial garden center in the rural I-2 light industrial zoning district. Is the petitioner present? If not, Wayne, can you comment on this?
But I do not believe the petitioner is online either. This matter is being requested to be continued to your June 21st meeting. I would note that the petitioner has not provided published notice or personal notice yet, as we understand it. Therefore, we would suggest that this matter be removed from your agenda until there's proof that notice has been provided, and then we will place it back on the agenda. That's a date that is should be published.
All right, thank you. Would that take a motion to remove it from the docket?
Yes.
Okay, so do we have a motion to remove docket number 2021-12 DP?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, any discussion? All in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed by nay. Motion carries 7-0. Thank you, Wayne, on that. Before we get started with the rest of the items, is there anybody in the audience virtually who would like to be recognized? If you do, please raise your hand. Greg who? Greg Dempsey. Any additional? All right, thank you. Next on the docket are the continued business items from last month. Docket 21 20-2021-08 PPA, C rights, 6250 Stonegate Lane. Petition for primary plat amendment to provide for the establishment of 3 lots in the R1 Rural Residential Zoning District. Is the petitioner present?
Yes, we're here.
Okay, please go.
Greg Dempsey, our engineer, is the one who is here virtually. My name again for the new board member is Lawrence Wright, Larry Wright. And I'm here with the owner, Carol Wright. So my mother's sitting over here. Last month, we were in to submit our petition for primary plat amendment to the Stonegate neighborhood. Stonegate is located west of Zionsville, north of Oak Street. It currently consists of 3 sections, 16 lots. We're looking to complete the neighborhood with 3 additional lots. Just summarily, at the last meeting, there was some question about the access. I think all of that has been pretty much resolved to the satisfaction of the homeowners association. I know there's a couple of those people that are here, but I think we'd like to let Greg to go ahead and continue and answer all of your questions. Thank you.
All right, Nancy. Mr. Dempsey, please proceed.
Okay, sorry, I was still muted. I apologize for that. Yeah, as Larry said,
Can you please introduce yourself and address for record, please?
okay, sorry. This is Greg Dempsey with Innovative Engineering, 3961 Perry Boulevard, Whitestown, Indiana. And yeah, as Larry said, there's been several conversations now with the Stonegate Homeowners Association about the concerns they raised at the last Planning Commission meeting. A couple of the biggest issues that were raised was the use of the private drive and the ownership and maintenance of the proposed common areas. As you may have seen in your packet, we pulled out the page from the existing covenants that covered the use of the private drive and its mention of the further real estate. One of the things we're trying to accomplish with this, the new plat, is we're defining that a little better. I guess really updating the definition of the further area or the further real estate to include specifically section 4 and also the portion of section 3 that contains the ingress egress easement. In addition to that, the new lots will be allowed to join the HOA. So that should satisfy any of the access over the existing private drive. The other concern was the ownership and maintenance of the proposed common areas. We've greatly expanded the language in the covenants included with the plat. You should all have a copy of those in the new packet you received. This a lot more clearly spells out that those areas are going to fall under the maintenance of these new 3 property owners, and that the HOA overall won't be responsible for the maintenance of particularly common area A, which is along the creek there. I know that was an area we spoke about during the last meeting. And just to take that a step further, we went ahead and defined those areas in the drawing of the plat as well, just to try and take another step to clarify that. In addition to those, which were really the 2 big concerns, one of the other concerns was the maintenance of the existing pond there. So some language has been added to cover that as well, to allow the HOA to get in there and maintain that pond and really take over the maintenance of that. With that, like I said, these were kind of what we had is what the major concerns were from the last meeting. Larry in particular has worked with the HOA to try and get these resolved. I think we've done that successfully. Even the meeting we had with them earlier today, that was expressed that, you know, they're pleased with the changes we've made and we think everybody's kind of in agreement now. With that, we'll be happy to answer any questions you guys may have. Thank you.
Thank you. At this point in time, is there anybody from the public who'd like to comment on this matter? Please step forward.
Good evening. My name is Kurt Hines. I'm president of the Stonegate Proper Homeowners Association, and I live here in beautiful Zionsville, Indiana at 6140 Stonegate Run. I just want to echo, I know I was here last time expressing concerns, a lot of which are informational, and we have worked with the Wrightses, with innovative engineering, to come up with reasonable compromises on all of those areas. As I kind of read the room, if you will, two of the big concerns by the Planning Commission seem to be around the egress ingress, which was part of our concern, as well as kind of this idea of a subdivision within a subdivision. And both of those areas have been, you know, satisfactorily addressed. We got a couple of, you know, things to iron out, sort of T's to cross and I's to dot, but we're, as now proposed, we're supportive of allowing the preliminary plat to be approved.
All right, thank you. Thank you. Is there anybody else who'd like to comment on this matter? Being none, Wayne, can I have staff report, please?
Staff is supportive of the petition as it's filed. Appreciate the concerns, as I think last month, some information as to the questioning of the access easement. Again, that's something to help it resolve. Appreciate that, and staff is supportive of the petition as it's filed. Happy to answer any questions.
All right, thank you. At this point in time, does anybody in the Planning Commission have any questions, comments regarding this matter?
Wayne, I got a question regarding lot 3. Is there any issues out there with it? It's kind of length to width ratio, or does that not hit when you get into lots in a subdivision? Is its odd shape ever going to cause problems, do you think?
For the existing lot 3,
Yeah.
well, uniquely, this lot was created prior to the current zoning ordinance, and lot area is something, lot width and lot area are specifically listed as non-conforming, approval non-conforming standards. So I think between applying the ordinances, how it braces this configuration as a permissible non-conformity, I can't, without knowing more about it, I can't see it jumping out as a.
Okay. So in other words, we don't think it'll come back at something. It's going to need a variance at a later date.
As it's a property that's outside of the boundaries of the plat that's being proposed. Let me put this around here. Again, I don't see this as I think it'll be a non-issue for us in terms of going forward.
Okay. Anybody else have any other questions, comments? If there are none, would somebody like to make a motion on this matter?
I move that docket 2021-08 PPA petition for primary plat amendment approval to provide for the establishment of 3 lots in the R1 Rural Residential Zoning District be approved based on the findings of fact as presented.
Or a second?
Second.
Is there any further discussion? Being none, all in favor signify by aye. Aye. Opposed by nay. Motion carries 7-0. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next on the docket is 2021-10 DP S Jenkins Tipsy Mermaid, 135 South Main Street, petition for development plan approval to permit a building renovation and building additions on a 0.17 acre parcel located in the village business district BBD. Before we get started, I'm not sure if we did this last month when this opened, but would somebody please make a motion to accept? Did you? Oh, that's wrong. Did you use first class mail to notice? Yes. Okay, so can I have a motion to accept first class mail for appropriate notice on this matter?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed by nay. Motion carries. So petitioner, please proceed.
Thank you. My name is David Roush, office at 170 South Main Street in Zionsville. The project in front of you is a renovation of the existing 135 Main Street building, formerly the Serenity Restaurant. The project includes a couple of very modest additions. And in a large sense, the property is being reconfigured. It's about 1,700 square feet today currently. We're adding about 800 square feet as noted in the application. The workings of the property, though, are substantially the same in terms of numbers of seats and restaurant accommodations. The kitchen that existed or will exist currently is much smaller than is required for a current operation. So although we're adding about 800 square feet, nearly all of that is service and kitchen space. The site.
I think it was an echo.
Okay. So effectively, we take the existing porch that's on Main Street and we're proposing to wrap it around to the current patio space on the south side of the lot, extending a hip roof that's compatible with the porch itself, creating a accessible entry off of Main Street with a sloped walk surface. And then a modest addition to the east side. There's currently about a 10 by 15 little shed addition that we're taking off, and then we'll rebuild a full addition to that side. All of the existing parking remains. The patio to the south remains where we're not building on it. And of course, to note, the Norway spruce tree that is in that property will actually come down as part of this project. We will be rehabilitating the landscaping that's in the patio and along its edges, and certainly creating a much nicer street presence for the property as we adapt it here. I think those are the highlights. I'm happy to field questions or comments that the commission has.
All right, thank you. At this point in time, is there anybody in the public who'd like to comment on this matter? There are none. Wayne, can we have staff report, please?
Certainly. Staff is supportive of the petition as it's been filed. We certainly appreciate the petitioner's efforts to work with the building at 135 South Main Street and take from its current status to this next iteration in its life. The previous use was for a restaurant. This current proposal is for a restaurant. We speak to the comparables within the staff report, specifically to the parking as one particular item. Certainly this project will enjoy benefiting from the road impact fee, sewer impact fee, and other credits that accompany the property based upon its former use as a restaurant, certainly leveraging that forward in terms of scalable increase. Again, staff is supportive of the petition as it's been filed, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
All right, thank you, Wayne. At this point in time, is there anybody on the planning commission who'd like to comment? Have any questions on this matter?
I would like to say something that comparison of the Tipsy Mermaid to Serenity is somewhat false because Serenity was open for lunch and tea, and this will be open in the evening as well. Do you really think that 9 parking spaces are adequate?
Well, so this property will be open for, right now, and I apologize, Sherry Jenkins is online, should we need her to speak into anything if I'm inadequate here, but at this point, the plan is to have lunch and dinner service for this property. This is now. How do I answer your question? So the mechanics of the zoning ordinance and the mechanics of the property itself suggest that 9 parking spaces are what is required for clients, and that is in fact what we are providing. I think we could talk about broader urban planning questions and considerations for parking itself. We did actually explore whether this facility should be larger, more extensive than what we are proposing. Some of you may or may not know we had pursued a project similar to this a year and a half ago or so, which was actually about the same size. So the pro forma is that it's a bar-centric boutique, for lack of a better word, restaurant. And the goal is not to, obviously the goal is to have a robust service, but not necessarily, jam as many seats into a piece of property as you can possibly afford to do. So I'm not sure whether I can, state factually whether 9 parking spaces is too much or too little. I can tell you that, we are trying to comply with the ordinance and believe we have done so.
Well, I appreciate the fact that you've complied. I bring it up only because I'm getting irritated that we don't have a parking garage somewhere on Main Street.
I'd kind of like to speak in support of what Mary's saying, just get a little more factual about it. The previous Serenity did serve lunch and dinner and
No, not dinner, just tea.
just tea. They didn't have a bar. They didn't have a kitchen suitable to actually serve what they did. Most I ever saw in there was 40 people inside. And yes, they used the outside space for events and would get larger occasional crowds. One of the things we repeatedly hear is that we do not want Zionsville to become Broad Ripple or Carmel. And back in the 80s and 90s, down in Broad Ripple, I built Basbo Pizza, Midtown Cafe, Broad Ripple Steakhouse, Housework. So everything that everybody says Zionsville doesn't want to become, I at one point built. So when I'm looking at this plan, this is exactly what we would do in Broad Ripple, because what's buried in it is the 60 seats inside that are shown on the plan, the 31 seats outside that are shown on the plan, and then there's 1,000 square feet of activity area with a bar. Current code means you need about 5 square foot per person, which means you can get another 200 people back there. So when I look at this plan, I see something where Serenity at best would have 40 people and an occasional outdoor use. This place will be set up that they could have 291 guests or customers plus a staff of 12 or so, which means their whole body count will be about 303 people. They're setting it up with a full bar and a full kitchen, which means they can run this continuously and service that number of people, or at least have that number of people occupying it. One of the other things I find interesting is going through the findings is 2 items. A couple of them come up. One is about parking, exactly. 2 is about the removal of that tree. I did a little check. I think that is the single tallest tree in the village. It's healthy. It's full of green tips. They probably ought to get the vines off the base of it. But, we consistently hear about how they do not want the neighborhood or the Zionsville, what are we calling it now? The Zionsville Preservation Commission plan or something like that is all about, basically preventing existing housing stock from being demolished. But here we are about to clear cut the tallest single tree in the village. And finally, it just rolls back around to exactly what it is. this is a wholesale multiple increase in the intensity of use of this property. And it seems to be sliding along, and I'm just amazed by it, because once again, when Sycamore Flats was brought up and the intensity of that, they got 300 people signing up, or 3,000 people signing something about not wanting change, and here crickets. But this will be a wholesale, much more intensive use of this property. And I'm just interested in hearing why this seems to be going through just fine. What's the difference?
May I speak to
Sure.
a couple of your comments, Larry? Well, let me first correct you. We actually, when this project started, I'm going to start with the tree, because that's absolutely science. When this project first started, and we knew what optimally would happen to make this truly not a snack shop, but a restaurant, which means you have to have appropriate service and appropriate dining space. Our first exploration was, well, what do you do with the property along the south side of the building? We've had an arborist. We've actually had two arborists look at the tree. And I certainly understand maybe your sensitivity to that. That tree is a Norway spruce. It's about 75 years old. And by a professional opinion, it likely would be lucky to have a 100-year life in that location. That tree is not completely healthy. And if you look at it closely enough, you'll see it thinning, and you will see that it is completely disrupting all of the pavement and the edge of the building in that area. So I can speak to that from somewhat of a factual standpoint. And yes, while that tree might be satisfactory in a natural environment where it doesn't have the urban pressures that it has, it is by a professional arborist point of view, it's 75 years into what they think is a 100-year lifespan. Secondly, it does not promote good use of that patio. That patio is not handicapped accessible, and it's also a mess because of the spoils from the tree. So I think that while, again, if we were out in the middle of the field, we would look at it differently. I think that the way one might look at this is, what does this location look like over the next 50 years, not the next 5. So that would be my comment to the tree. Relative to the disposition of the property, we cannot, nor will we speak to the previous operators' lack of intensity or the perceived intensity of this operator. What we can speak to is that we have X number of square feet, and as I tried to say clearly, that the square footage that we are adding almost on a square foot by square foot basis goes to service areas. We are expanding the kitchen, the servery, and the back bar area, and the addition to the south is actually basically taking existing dining space that existed, and also restrooms, and the additional space that we're creating actually just pushes the existing dining space from what's inside the footprint to the outside of the footprint. So, how this project may fall into one's opinion about what Zionsville should or shouldn't be, I'm going to leave that to the subjective minds of the community and certainly the discretion of the Plan Commission. I'm not going to speak to that as either the designer of this building or a 37-year resident of this community. So I'm happy to answer any more factual questions that might be out there.
So then answer my factual question. Can the occupancy load get up to 303 people?
No,
So the 1,000 square feet of activity space with the bar, that doesn't count? That's not going to be used?
that space is for the guests of the restaurant itself. It's for cornhole or shuffleboard or those kinds of things. And if need be, I'll have to call on Sherry as an online member to speak to that.
It's 1,000 square feet of space, which 5 square feet per person, could have 200 people in it. There's a bar back there. So when you add that to the seating,
The service bar is a function of serving guests that are seated in the patio itself. There is concern from Sherry that the flow from inside the bar, which will be stacked for the inside guests, and with use on the patio, will need some sort of supplementary service. I'm going to let her speak to this, but my representation to you is that is not, a pit, for lack of a better word, for hundreds of people to, mingle in. That's not the purpose, and that's not what's being described in the plans. So if we need
I am here to comment on that if I'm heard right now. Can I?
Yeah, please introduce yourself and then address, please, and then before you speak, thanks.
All right, this is Sherry Jenkins. I'm at 215 Sherwood Court in Zionsville. I'm not sure where the 300 person number came. Currently, Noah Grants, as we know, is a very large space, just a couple doors down. And there is no way my occupancy is at 168 currently. I don't even think if I wanted to, I could put 200 people at Noah Grants. So when I look at Serenity, that space, 135 Main, that space is so much smaller, even including the outside. 300 people, I'm not sure, again, I've been listening, but I'm not sure where that number came from, but there's no way, even if I wanted to, 300 people could even, there's no room for 300 people. The back area that David was speaking of is an overflow waiting area, because the dining room is so tiny, honestly, in Serenity. I think David and Darren and I the other day, I think, Dave, correct me if I'm wrong, it's 500 square feet. Everything that Dave, please correct me, because you know me in numbers. That's where you come in. But the dining room is super small, and the addition of the bar area on the patio will allow for more guests. It's also taking up a decent portion of the patio that exists currently, or did exist with Serenity. And the back area is a waiting area and when we use the word bar, I call it a mobile bar. It will not be a full service bar. It's more like a she shed with a few beers, a few wines, just to have a place for people to wait, because there is so little space in that restaurant. So I'm curious as to the 300 number. And Dave, if you could concur with me on what you and Darren and I spoke about the other day about the dining room area as far as the square footage. It's actually pretty tiny.
Yeah, I don't think I know the numbers. Existing dining room. So the other thing about the dining room is, so two things. First of all, we're taking a portion of it out for a proper service area on the north side. We're taking another 80 square feet out for a vestibule. So to Sherry's point, we have, the remnants of what was already, and another 80 square feet for a restroom. So it's probably in the range of 500 square feet, which is what's prompted the addition to the south. Obviously taking also advantage of Main Street, and the natural light views to the south and so forth and clearly a nice wraparound porch addition. So in terms of when you look at the site plan, everything to the east of the building is service area. There's a service ramp that comes from effectively the back gate. And the service bar that is back there is as Sherry mentioned, and I'll reinforce, is an intent. There is not a bar that one sits at. There's not a bar that one stands at. It's a service bar which supports the restaurant function that's within. So, I mean, if the commission would seek to have some sort of, for lack of a better word, commitment or something, that there is not going to be a pick the number 200 or 300 person capacity back there, so you don't have a concert on your hands or something that imagining the worst. I could certainly confer with Sherry, but I'm confident that based on the design decisions and the program to date, that has never been the intention. The fact is that is space that is there today. And if it weren't there today, we wouldn't have it at all, because it's quite frankly, unnecessary. But it's, rather than spend money to take it out and do what I don't know with, it was basically left, in place. So that's the agenda for why that space actually exists, is because it's there today. So it's the best I got.
It's fine. I mean, by the time you take out the tree and add the addition, you're going to strip it all out and rebuild it anyways, regardless of, I mean, it's nice that it's there, but it will not be there by the time the work is done. It will be completely rebuilt.
We don't think it'll be completely rebuilt. We do think that everything to the sort of the midpoint of the east edge of the building will be, but no, we don't. There's,
Okay.
The backside of it is.
Oh, sorry, Dave, go ahead.
Yeah, you're fine.
If I don't know the last time anyone's, and David and I have done this a few times, if you actually walk that patio and look at it, we've all seen it. We drive by it, we walk by it, but if you actually walk through that patio, it's an eyesore. It is not pretty the way it is today. It's a great space. There is a decent amount of space with, exciting uses for it. But if you walk it today, changing it, in my mind, is a positive, because if you walk through it right now, it's full of weeds. It's full of old, I don't even know what those things are, like rotten, or not rotten, the wick, or the it's just, walk through it. You'll see it's full of, it has not been taken care of in 20 years. It is not pretty. And my intent is to make it a beautiful thing on Main Street. Yes, it will change. Yes, the bar will take over the space where the tree is. I will also, though, beautify any of the landscaping that is there, because right now it's not landscaping, it's weeds and wrought iron that is rusted. I mean, quite frankly, like, again, I ask all of you to walk through that patio, and you'll see, if you really look at it, it is not a beautiful space as it stands today. The patio, the bricks from the tree, it's not flat at all. It's a beautiful space. It can be, but it is not today. And I encourage you to go look at it so that you understand we're not destroying a beautiful patio. We are here to take a space right on Main Street and turn it into a beautiful patio.
And my concern isn't about the look of the patio. I walked it this morning. Yes, it's a mess. That's not a doubt. The question is we are taking an existing property and a previous use and replacing it with a much more intense use. We, or as me as a member of the Plan Commission specific, we consistently get hit with the comments about parking, too much density, too much activity, too much intensity. Hence, Sycamore Flats was an amazing project for what it would have done to the infrastructure of the town. It would have added net parking, would have improved drainage, would have done a whole bunch of good for the town, as well as cleaned up the whole intersection down there. It got shut down. I'm trying to see what the difference is, because what's going on here with this property is this will be a much more intense use of an existing facility. The addition of the bar, the build out of the kitchen, the addition of the additional seating inside and out, plus this outside recreation area. And my question is, and this is just, what's the difference? Because
So,
the 9 parking spaces are not going to service this.
so can we get a little bit more, I guess, direction on how that outdoor entertainment space is going to be used? Is it for patrons who have been seated but haven't received their food? Is it for patrons who are waiting for a seat?
Patrons who are
Want to
waiting
have
for
some place
a
to
seat.
hang out, or is it as a additional permanently occupied space in addition to all the seating for the restaurant?
It's a place for people who are waiting for a seat, because again, like I said, the last meeting I had this past week, and again, Darren's not here, but we have just 500 square feet inside for dining. And I think that is being overlooked right now. It is a tiny area of just dining space. So it's a place for people to wait so that they, quite frankly, they don't leave and don't go anywhere else. It's a place where they can, I've used the word adult playground. They can sit, they can grab, like I said, in this little mobile bar, they can grab, a beer or a glass of wine and wait for their table, because there will be waits. It is not a dining area.
Great. Thank you
I
for
might-
clarifying that.
If I can just add, I mean, I don't know how to answer the intensity of use question. I don't know how that is actually administered from a number standpoint. Maybe there is something there. I will say that space in its final configuration is no different than what it was in its current original configuration. So if you're asking about a change, you're asking about a change in operational use of that space. And I think what we're trying to say and what Sherry's trying to say is there is not a contemplated change of operational use of that space.
The building, and maybe one thing, and Dave, you have said it, but I will reiterate. The building as it stands today and has Serenity operated was a kitchen with more than 500 square feet of dining. I don't know what that number is, but as a restaurant that wants to serve a more complicated food, a complicated menu, things that need a hood, a stove, a grill, I'm taking areas of that space that right now, or when Karen had it, that were dining space, and I'm using that as part of the kitchen because I have a more complicated menu and sophisticated menu than what was there. So we are removing areas that were previously dining room space. And now what will be part of the kitchen to operate like I said, a more diverse menu. So the space inside in the winter months, I mean, I've spoke with Dave about this. In the winter months, it's going to be a very small restaurant, The outside is going to be a bonus, May through September. So as Mary mentioned 45 minutes ago, and I think what she said secondly was, it's always an issue in Zionsville. I don't think anybody disagrees with that. But I guess what I'm trying to say with this specific project is a lot of her space when Larry, you said like, I'm changing it. And yes, I am. I mean, I'm not going to pretend that I'm not, but I am using a lot of what she used for tables as kitchen space. So again, this project isn't just about the problem of parking in Zionsville. in my opinion. Clearly, I have 2 restaurants next door. If anybody knows what the parking problems are, I'm your girl. I get it. I have customers who I get the parking problem. This is not going to make it better, and it's not going to make it worse. There is a parking problem. And I think to take Tipsy Mermaid and say that this is the problem with parking, I think is unfair to what I am trying to do to downtown Zionsville. To be quite frank, there is a parking problem. This restaurant is going to benefit the TIF district. If anybody needs the numbers, if you don't have access to them, I can show them to you, the amount of money that I've put in. This will do the same thing. And I just feel like there should be an understanding that this restaurant isn't the reason there's a parking problem.
So Wayne, essentially, because they're not changing the seating, the parking situation gets grandfathered through to them. Is that a fair statement?
Correct. When we looked at the zoning analysis prior to, maybe even concurrent with the filing, certainly this was a conversation point prior to the filing, the original former use, I believe, had 90, would have generated 97 seats. This use has 96 seats. So yes, the zoning status of the legal non-conforming use, if you will, the parking deviation, is carried forward by the current, by someone who seeks to occupy the space next, which is in this case, the Tipsy Mermaid.
Where's the delivery accesses? Are deliveries coming in off Oak Street? Is that how food deliveries and so forth and everything's gonna be coming in off Oak?
They'd be down the alley.
They get
yes.
down the alley. Okay.
Yep.
And I would like to point out, I sitting here counting some of the other restaurants in the area, and I may not be accurate on the parking spots, but this one at least does have 9 parking spots that goes with it. A lot of the other restaurants don't have no parking. It's not just public street parking. At least there's 9 spots. I agree, parking's awful. I drive a significantly sized truck and I can't get around too easily.
I think with the outdoor bar activity space, whatever you guys are going to call it, I think you're not going to turn people away if they show up to have a beer while they're potentially waiting to get into the Salty Cowboy too. So I think it's going to be a gathering spot because it is a decent sized space. I guess, but on the other hand, if that parking situation is grandfathered in as usage, I don't know what we can do. I mean, I don't think there's much we can do to remedy that here.
I'm going to jump in and say, as someone who's obviously a business owner, many of you know that I grew up here. I went to Zionsville High School. Full disclosure, Mrs. Grabanowski was my teacher. I love, I've always said how much I love this town, and from a business side and a personal side, I don't have an answer for parking because that's just not what I'm good at. I wish someone could figure it out. That's not where my brain goes. But I do think we don't, I think Larry said earlier, like we said, we don't want to be Carmel, but I do think we want a vibrant downtown. And I think that's what I'm trying to do. If any of you remember, like when I had Bricks 15, 16 years ago, all we had in this town were antique stores, really sleepy clothing stores, and a few restaurants. we have, over the past 16 years that I've been a business owner in the village, we've seen a great change in bringing people to the village. They're not necessarily going to Traders Point or to Carmel. And again, I don't have the answer for parking, but I feel like I have a really good inside look at how I can bring people to Zionsville, which I think is a goal that we all want. This new restaurant is, I'm personally super proud of it. Like, it's going to be wonderful between the food, the service, and the infrastructure, and then structure that David has created. I don't have an answer for the parking because that's not my strength. My strength is attempting to bring people to the village and making our main street. And what I think is, I've said this before, as cool as the Arts and Design District Main Street, which does have a parking garage, ironically enough. And I don't have an answer, but I do want all of you to know that I hear your criticisms, I hear your frustrations, I hear the issues, but I'm here 1,000% to help our town become something better. And I don't want to say bigger and better. I left out the word bigger, better. A place that people will not leave and go to Traders Point or not go to Carmel. They'll stay in Zionsville because we have really awesome options for them. That they're willing to park 7 blocks away because they're willing to, they're willing to. So that's my soapbox. Sorry.
For any additional questions, comments on this one? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
I move that docket 2021-10-DP to permit a building renovation and building addition on 0.17 acre parcel located in the Village Business District be approved based on the findings in the staff report and staff recommendations. 2, submitted findings of facts. And 3, subject to the resolution of the outstanding review items identified by the engineering report memos in Exhibit 4 of the staff report.
Is there a second?
Second.
Before we vote, Wayne, I want to ask one question. Based upon this, they're not asking for any variances and they're in full compliance with the ordinance. Is that correct?
Correct.
All right, thank you. Any further discussion? All right, all in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed by nay. Motion carries 7-0. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. I do appreciate.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next on the docket number is 2021-18 DP, on to new business. 2021-18 DP, Outlot K, Appaloosa Crossing, 3301 South US 421 Zionsville, Indiana. Petition for development plan approval of a 7,030 plus or minus square foot multi-tenant building on Outlot K, 1.29 plus or minus acres within the Appaloosa Crossing Development Zone, Rural Professional Business, PB, and within the Michigan Road Overlay MRO. Waivers of architectural design and building materials are also requested. Did you, Matt, did you use first class mail? Okay, so I would entertain a motion to accept first class mail for notice on this matter.
So moved.
Is there a second? All in favor, signify by aye.
Aye.
All right, please proceed, Matt.
Thank you, Mr. President. For the record, my name is Matt Price. I'm an attorney with Denton's here tonight on behalf of Harris FLP, the owner and developer of the Appaloosa Crossing project at the southeast corner of 146th Street and US 421 Michigan Road. Here tonight to present to you what would be the 5th building to be approved in the development. Mr. Russ Help I'll take you through a PowerPoint that we have to summarize our petition. Go to the first slide. Thank you. This is a proposal relating to Outlot K, which is the southernmost outlot. So it's the southernmost outlot along Michigan Road, southwest corner of the project, immediately north of the water feature to the south. And you'll see Outlot J immediately north of the proposed outlot. Outlot J is a medical office building that was approved it's last fall, I think is the timeline for that. What we're proposing here by way of use is a multi-tenant building just under 8,000 square feet. The northernmost section you see there is for a veterinarian. And then the southernmost section, the majority of the building, approximately 5,000 square feet, is for a dog daycare. It's a pampered pooch resort and spa, high-end doggy daycare that provides grooming, some overnight accommodations with a reservation, and we think would be a very much a welcome addition to this corridor. Go to the next slide. You may recall that we discussed over the last year or so, we got our first building approved last April, just shortly after we started going with the virtual meetings. And at that time, we presented what has become the Appaloosa Theme, which is the building design that gives a nod to modern interpretation of equestrian type architecture, gives a historical nod to Mr. Harris's family's ownership of the property and the white barn structure that they used to have on this location. We're continuing with that theme with respect to this building as well. Just to give an example, the southernmost section of that slide reflects the view from the western frontage. You'll see on the far southern end of the building is the barn-like gabled roof, and we are borrowing from the retail shops, which are at the far northern end, which has that same design, including the same front facade features. Next slide. This is kind of a tight shot of that same western elevation. It also shows what are the legally permissible signage areas on the building. This is not, our plan is not to use all of the legally permissible areas for signage, but we did want to demarcate where the permissible signs could go. And again, we're anticipating just the two individual users. Next, Joe. Thank you. This last slide gives a call out to one of the features of the staff report, which had to do with our landscaping plan. We have received a variance on each of the proposals along Michigan Road to not have a 6-foot landscape parking strip along our western parking lot frontage, and in exchange have relocated those plantings to the rear of the property. And in discussions with staff, what they've requested is that we move and concentrate those plantings to the south east section of the property. And that's what this depicts here as well, to add additional screening. I should also point out too that in the staff report notes this, that in the rear of the doggy daycare and spa, we have about a little over 3,000 square foot fenced in what we anticipate to be grassy enclosure for play, exercise, other things that dogs may need to do in that area. We're surrounding that, screening that with a 6-foot privacy fence to assure that that is all very much contained. With that, I would be happy to answer any questions that you have and would respectfully request your approval of our development plan this evening. Thank you.
All right, thank you. At this point, is there anybody in the audience who'd like to comment on this matter? All right, there are none. Wayne, can we have staff report, please?
Certainly, staff is supportive of the petition as it's been filed, and certainly notes that the variance request is on file with the Board of Zoning Appeals for a number of items specific to this project in order to facilitate various components, Certainly the landscaping, as mentioned by Mr. Price, is one particular, and the building heights another, for example. And certainly staff would note for the record, and certainly we would look to include this in the form-based code, is that in the rural area prior to reorganization, how height was measured on a rural building is different than how the town measures and defines building heights today. In the rural area, building height is actually measured from an average of peaks, measurements from the roof mid-peak, I believe. And so certainly if you were to apply that definition against the building that's in front of you, the building would more than comply with the height standard as defined by the Boone County Area Plan Commission zoning ordinance circa 2010. Again, staff is supportive of the petition as it's been filed. So again, subject to the variance request pending with the Board of Zoning Appeals. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
All right, thank you, Wayne. At this point in time, I'll open up the members of the Plan Commission for questions and comments.
Couple one, Matt. You didn't previously submit this, but we got some documentation on it a while ago, and then it got pulled. Did you guys add the 24-hour to be able to do the overnight, or was the original one?
Here's what we felt like had occurred on that is that the variance was phrased for the hearing that was scheduled for the first Wednesday of this month as quote, an animal daycare. Under the definition of animal daycare under the Zionsville ordinance, it expressly does not permit boarding, and that was not our intention. Our intention was to permit boarding. So we've gone back, amended our petition, and re-notified.
Okay, and then is there any relationship between the vet and the doggy daycare group, or are they kind of two separate entities with similar?
They're very familiar with each other, but they're two separate entities. They're not affiliated.
And then, so Wayne, and this is kind of a question for you. So I've got a building with a vet in it, and they've got a small fenced area behind them so that dogs that have had some sort of, or pets that have had some sort of surgery or something like that can get out and they can kind of walk and check that the anesthesia is worn off. I'm assuming at some point the vet determines they need a little outdoor fenced area and don't really want to put those animals with the other animals playing, that could get approved without having to come back before us.
If that would comply with the minor amendment test as we find in the zoning ordinance, then yes, it could be something that staff would administer and then report that out in the normal course of business.
I've got a question. If for some reason this variance is for the overnight boarding for the pet facility is not approved, does this modify how you deal with the building?
It may. What I understand the kind of the floor plan is that they provide for kind of a large indoor exercise area and allow pet parents to monitor via closed circuit webcam. And so certainly a key offering of their business model is to have by reservation private suites for dogs that seek to stay overnight. And I don't know exactly what they would do if that was not permitted. I know it's just a big part of kind of the suite of services that they offer. And, they've given me some indication that it's not necessarily a consistent use of that service, but during some holiday seasons, during vacation times, they see kind of an uptick in that usage. Other times, not as much, but something that they feel is very much needed in the community based on their market research.
I mean, I'm just, if the BZA doesn't approve the variance, does this change? I mean, are you going to come back and ask for something different, or are you going to work through Wayne on that?
No, I think we would work with our tenant client and with Wayne on that, certainly. We try to put our best foot forward and try to get that variance, of
Keep the
course.
same building
Yep.
as is, okay.
Well, I had a question on height, and Wayne answered
Yeah.
on Martha's, so.
Right.
Appreciated that.
I would say from my experience too, architecturally, that it is traditionally measured from the average of the eave to the peak, not generally to the peak itself. In most of the municipalities in central Indiana within which I work.
I don't think anyone could tell 2 feet difference anyway, so.
And oddly enough, I looked at what would that roof pitch look like if it were down 2 feet, and it looks weird. It looks better at the pitch that it is right now.
Any other questions, comments?
I think, once again, I don't think I can speak for the rest of the BZA, but I know when it does come before us, the location of this type of business on that property couldn't be better, given its separation with the water feature to the south and the distance to the neighborhoods to the east, and then the interstate, and then even the rest of the development to the north. So I can't foresee the BZA having many issues with what is being requested,
I-
but
to
can't
be
speak
honest,
for them.
I'm not anticipating any, but I was just kind of wondering if for some reason something happened. So,
You want a motion?
sure, take a motion on this one.
I move that waiver of architectural building design requirements be approved based on the findings from the staff report exhibit 8A as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed by nay. That motion carries 7-0.
I move that the waiver of building materials be approved based on the findings from the staff report exhibit 8B as presented.
Is there a second? All right. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed by nay. That one also carries 7-0.
All right. I move the docket number 2021-18-DP to allow for the development plan approval of a 7,830 square foot multi-tenant building on outlet K, 1.29 plus or minus acres within the Appaloosa Crossing Development Zone Rural Professional Business, PB, and within the Michigan Road Overlay, MRO, be approved based on the findings in the staff report and the staff recommendations, submitted findings of fact, subject to the approval of the requested variances by the Board of Zoning Appeals, and subject to the resolution of the outstanding review items identified by the engineering review letter in Exhibit 7 of the staff report.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right. Any further discussion? All right. All in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed by nay. That motion also carries 7-0. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Next item on the docket is 2021-19 DP Cohats Project 75 North Main Street, Zionsville, Indiana. Petition for development plan approval for the renovation of a 10,800 plus or minus square foot mixed-use building with the addition of a porch for the purposes of co-working office spaces and a restaurant. The 0.25 acre site is zoned Village Business District BBD. Before we get started, did you notice with first class mail?
Yes,
Okay. I would take a motion to accept first class mail's appropriate notice for this matter.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed by nay. Motion carries. Please proceed.
Hey, good evening, Commissioners. My name is Misha Rabinowitz, an attorney with offices at 1 Indiana Square in Indianapolis. I'm here on behalf of Cohatch. Also here with me tonight is John Watkins. He's in the audience here, one of the principals of Cohatch. As well, virtually, the architect on this project, Tim Lyas, online. This project involves the property, sometimes known as the Sanctuary, most recently used as Nancy Noel's art studio and a special event space at the southeast corner of Poplar and Main. The space already includes a full commercial kitchen and bar area. Of course, this is a historic building. The building's history dates back to 1854 when it was originally a church and was rebuilt in 1895. Over the years, in addition to the church, the building has been used as a gathering space for the community, office space, and retail space. Unfortunately, the building has been vacant for the past 6 years. And I think the owners, the Cosine family, would tell you that they've really struggled to find a user. And it's an important building to the village. I know the Cohatch folks feel that way. And Cohatch proposes to repurpose the building, really bring it back to life as a co-working space. And roughly 1,800 square foot restaurant with an outdoor patio. Cohatch is an office co-working space concept. I'm going to describe what they do. They're based in Columbus, Ohio, but rapidly growing throughout not only central Indiana, but the Midwest. Cohatch's investment in this property will exceed $3 million. Last month, we appeared before the Board of Zoning Appeals on a petition for a parking variance. And that request was unanimously approved, conditioned on a commitment to provide off-site parking in an amount that the ordinance requires, which we are committed to doing. And also a special exception to permit the outdoor patio that is proposed to be added to the building. So tonight we are seeking your approval of the development plan for this project so we can move forward. One other thing I wanted to mention as we get into this is that we've worked very closely with residents within the village, the Zionsville Chamber of Commerce, and the Z-Works group, who has a similar business concept, a little bit different, but have really worked out a unique partnership that will, we think, permit both groups to prosper. So next slide, please. Just to tell you a little bit more about Cohatch. It's a co-working concept. It's not like traditional office space where people come in office from 8 to 5. It's a shared office space concept. They have memberships to the location, and their membership permits them to use other Cohatch locations. It's not like what you think of as big box co-working that some of you may have heard of, like WeWork. These are smaller concepts. The difference, Cohatch's difference is they really look for unique spaces that have some historical significance or buildings that have character that they may be able to do like what they're proposing to do here in Zionsville, to bring them back to life and repurpose them. They're currently working on a project in Broad Ripple, actually set to open this week, bringing an old historic church back to life as co-working space. Next slide, please. They also try to bring unique designs to their projects. These are some sort of representative interior slides showing you what their spaces look like, bringing some contemporary looks to the conference rooms, even some family-friendly aspects. The middle on the bottom slide shows a little mini arcade where you're bringing your child to work or have the opportunity to use the space for a birthday party, that sort of thing. Next slide, please. Here are just a few additional views. Next slide. The other thing that is different about Cohatch is it is mission oriented. They understand the importance of engaging with the community. They often refer to their concept as Town Hall 2.0 because it is intended to be a place where communities are able to gather, whether it be for their business needs or often nonprofit or community organizations use their facilities for their purpose. Next slide, please. The co-working membership also brings other benefits to users. They may use the on-site amenities like theater rooms and podcast rooms and that sort of thing. And then other off-site amenities like they have vacation homes and things that members can rent. Next slide, please. This is just a listing of the locations they're either opening or working on. Recently expanded into the Florida area and of course are growing here in Indianapolis. Next slide. So moving on to the sanctuary building. This is a view of the inside and just sort of a representative view of the entryway. Next slide, please. This is just an aerial showing you the location, southeast corner of Poplar and Main. Next slide. Here's some photos of the existing status. Next slide. And just quickly on the site plan, this slide is a site plan showing the parking calculation. The site only provides for 4 on-site parking spaces. The ordinance between the office use and the restaurant requires 34 parking spaces. I'm going to get into that a little bit further. Next slide, please. This is the basement floor plan. The basement would just be co-working space. Next slide. This is the first floor plan there you see on the south side of the building. It's really just reusing the existing event or meeting hall space for the restaurant using the existing kitchen. And then on the north side is the first floor of the co-working space. Next slide, please. This is the second floor, as it says first floor, but it's actually the second floor. There's a sort of an atrium staircase up to second floor, which is also co-working space. Next slide, please. Here's a rendering of the building with the improvements and the additional patio there you see along Main Street. Next slide, please. And a little closer look, there you see the signage. They're just proposing two blade signs that we think fit with the property. Next slide, please. Here's a closer look at the signage and downlit. Next slide. Another rendering. Next slide. Just some of the materials for you, mainly the lighting and heating element for the patio and the decking. Next slide. We presented the parking mitigation plan in great detail. Commissioner Jones can speak to that, but we arrived at what we think is a solution. I wanted to talk a little bit about the complementary nature of the uses. Again, co-working space is not traditional office space. People don't office there every day from 8 to 5. They come and go and they're not there every day. Cohatch, typically, like in this instance, is located in walkable communities. They anticipate that a lot of their members will live in close proximity to the site. The other thing about the use, the office use and the restaurant use are compatible in that the office use is primarily a daytime during the week use, whereas the restaurant use is in the evening and on weekends. So with that, we have proposed, and I guess been approved, 4 on-site parking spaces. The ordinance requires 34 parking spaces, and we will provide off-site parking. We have secured a lease with the property owner. Next slide, please. The property owner at 95 South Elm Street for at least 23 spaces, and we've had conversations with a number of other property owners nearby for additional parking spaces. So we will be able to meet that commitment. This slide here shows you, we had just inventoried the on-street parking. That's of course not included in our calculation. But again, the parking has been approved by the Board of Zoning Appeals. Next slide, please. One more. I just wanted to mention again that we have worked closely with Z-Works, with the Chamber of Commerce, with other restaurants, including restaurant owners, other neighbors and restaurant owners, to make sure that we had a plan that was supported by at least the constituents that we were able to speak to. And so their letters of support are in your materials. With that, we'd ask for your approval of the development plan, and we're happy to answer any questions.
All right, thank you very much. At this point in time, is there anybody in the public, from the public who'd like to comment on this matter? All right, why don't you promote them? Ann, can you hear me? You must be muted.
Hello, is that better?
Yes, please state your name and address.
Yes, Ann W. King, and I am a retail merchant and have been for 21 years in the village of Zionsville and property owner since 2007. And I certainly welcome this venture by Cohatch. However, I do want to make sure on the adequate parking for their intended restaurant patrons, staff, and office coworkers. I struggled all the years that Miss Noel was in business in that building to keep her staff, event staff, and her event patrons from parking in my business parking lot, which is to the rear of 6066 East Cedar Street. And that is located diagonally southeast from what I call the Noel Church Building or the former sanctuary. And ditto all the comments Larry Jones made on the 2021-10-DP, the old Serenity Place. There is so little parking in the village, and you allowed, or your predecessors allowed, the co-working space Z-Works to be approved with almost no parking and certainly much more parking than 4 spaces. And all day they park their cars all up and down Cedar Street for 6, 8, 10 hours a day without moving their car. Whereas at least restaurant patrons in the space that Sherry Jenkins was talking about, at least restaurant patrons are only there for an hour or 2, but co-working people are there for many hours. And it has just incredibly impacted parking for our business as retail merchants in the village.
All right, thank you very much.
You're welcome. And I will make one more comment.
Sure.
Mr. Rabinowitz very kindly sent me a letter dated May 5th about this meeting today. I did not receive it until May 14th. I never received any notice about the parking hearing prior to today.
All right, thank you.
Thank you so much.
So was she noticed?
I have to go back and look at the list. We sent the notice to the same list that we had before, so that would be my belief.
And on the BZA, there's not a notice. Is there a notice with BZA, Wayne?
Correct, yes.
Yeah, there is. Okay. All right. Would you like to comment on her?
Yeah, just we're certainly sympathetic to retail business owners and understand just from the short time here and at the last meeting that there's a parking situation in Zionsville. We would respectfully say that bringing the daytime workers that Cohatch does, who will frequent the retail business, is a benefit to the community. I guess I would, and Mr. Watkins here can speak to this if need be, but I don't think it's accurate to say that co-working users typically spend all day at the co-working space. It's more a couple hour type of stay, and not on an everyday basis. So, and then I would just say that we worked very hard on the commitment that was incorporated into the Board of Zoning Appeals approval to provide off-site parking. I guess one thing that is responsive that I didn't mention is that for big events, like maybe the event she was talking about that occurred on the Nancy Noel use, we would have valet parking so that we could get people to the off-site parking easily.
So will the Cohatch members there will be fully aware that the parking, the 29 spaces, 31 spaces, they're going to know exactly where the location is and they're going to be directed to those spaces?
Yeah, and if Mr. Watkins can speak to that, we've talked about signage and or instructions to members when they take membership.
Good evening, and thank you for the opportunity to speak to you. My name is John Watkins from Columbus, Ohio, and one of the principals of Cohatch. As we spoke at the BZA hearing, what we've done is worked with Bob Harris to secure a significant number of parking spaces at his 95 South Elm site. And the discussion at the BZA is it's very difficult to enforce our members, whether it's the restaurant patrons or our co-working members, to use that parking because it is 400 feet away and there is a steep slope to get up and down that building. What I think agreed to at that meeting, that certainly our staff, the co-working staff and the restaurant staff, we can require that they park in that location. And then we have 4 of our additional, and then there are 4 different businesses with a total of 33 parking spots within 200-300 feet of our location that I'm here this week to try to finalize negotiations for the use of their spaces, dedicated evenings and weekends to deal with the evening problem. There's actually plenty of parking in Zionsville. It's just a lot of it is every business owner wants to protect it for their own clients, which we understand. So, you know, we're very committed to solving the problem. We're leasing this building from Bob that we will not use. We're doing it just to secure the parking, and we will be paying other business owners to use their parking for evenings and weekends. And we'll do our best to encourage our members during the day to use the parking that we have, that we'll be using at 95 South Elm. And we'll do our best with the restaurant, including having the valet service if it becomes an issue.
Can I ask, in your experience running co-working spaces, due to COVID in 2020, my guess is your users stayed longer than they would traditionally do because they were 100% remote from home versus folks that would come there and plop down for a few hours and then go have a business meeting. They couldn't have a business meeting, so they were having Zoom calls from the same place. So as COVID goes away, the issue that maybe the Zionsville folks are experiencing with Z-Works, with people camping out for 8 or 10 hours, will likely revert back to what I see as traditional co-working space, where you come for a couple hours in between meetings to get some stuff done, and then you're back out again. Is that kind of do you see that same trend?
The trends that we're seeing are that small, medium, ultra small, medium size businesses are have the work pattern that you have, and then we're seeing large corporations that are offering co-working services to their employees as an amenity. So, you know, you get away from the kids and the dogs in the evening or during the day, and have a place to go to hold those meetings and not be at Starbucks or Panera's, whatever. So those are the trends we're seeing. It's really hard to forecast if it will snap back to that over time. I would agree with your logic. As Misha mentioned, we're building up to 10 locations around central Indiana, so people have the option to go to different places and where they have their meetings. I would also note that approximately 100 Z-Works members, existing members, will transition from their location to ours. So there shouldn't be any additional impact, and that may be good news or bad news for Mrs. King, but there won't be any additional intensity of use with the Z-Works members, because they'll just be moving across the street to our side.
Yeah. Thank you.
What are the hours of co-hatch? I guess for the remote workers office, I mean,
it's staff from Monday through Friday, 8 to 5, and then we use key fobs. So it's open 24/7, but we rarely see any co-working activity, past 5 o'clock. And then, the advantage of our model is that the restaurant and the co-working uses are, opposite in terms of their times of use.
Okay, thanks. Any other questions, comments?
Yeah, I've got just one more, just kind of for the good of the order, basically. What's interesting, and I guess the comparison from this project to the Tipsy Mermaid is it's Yeah, just a couple things I want to bring up. So this location, this building has got a specific set of handicaps. One is a church, and churches just never convert into anything easily. They are specifically built for their use as a house of worship, and so they hence have large rooms or small rooms. They just don't really transition well. The other thing is this was built in 1854 when parking was not an issue. I'm assuming back in 1854 there was complaints about the horses and buggies and that sort of mess of that. But hence you've got a site that has no parking, and two, what you also find is because it's not been used for anything in the last several years, the whole grandfathering of anything goes away. Hence, they've got to meet all the modern standards while they're handicapped by a site and a building built 170 years ago. It's kind of odd. My concern regarding the Tipsy Mermaid is they were grandfathering in all these kind of uses and parking, but they were increasing the size of the space by 50%. And I'll stand pat on my numbers about the number of occupants they can have at the site. So they're going to have actually a greater impact on parking, but they were held to a much lower standard, which then kind of puts the burden back on Wayne, is that somehow the town of Zionsville has got to get a little consistency and continuity as to how they want to address the parking. Hence, Ms. King's comments are true, and we're not really doing anything to provide a consistent path for future development and redevelopment of other buildings in the town. So, about it.
Amen.
And I will say this, I appreciate you guys working with BZA on getting this parking set up. And if you wouldn't have, you'd been hearing it from Larry on the other side.
Exactly.
So thanks a lot for that. Is there any further comments, questions?
I appreciate the preservation of the historic building. I understand where Larry's coming from. I hope it works. It's kind of a neat concept. And it's where we do have parking, it's at the far south end of Main Street. And at some point, the town of Zionsville has to figure this out because it's not fair. You guys are having to go the extra mile to try and valet parking. I mean, okay. Yeah, it has to be dealt with so that business owners who live next door to you can park in front of their building and when they have to load equipment.
I generally, I guess I have a concern about the 24-hour access. This sounds like a really neat idea, and please, I'm not trying to simplify it when I say this, but it sounds like a business gym. And people, there's 24-hour gyms that have people in and out of them all the time. They're just not on Main Street. I guess that's my biggest concern about this. I think they've done a great job with everything else. It's the 24-hour access that concerns me. So.
Any additional comments, questions? If not, is there a motion on this matter?
Move that docket number 2021-19-DP.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry, Wayne.
We had so much conversation back and forth. Forgot about the staff report. So Wayne, do we have staff report?
Certainly happy to provide one. And certainly the BZA, we worked for that project as well. Certainly mentioned here. Again, certainly staff appreciates that dialogue, and certainly there's a fair amount in exchange, was exchanged related to the parking. Certainly ultimately the goal of the Board of Zoning Appeals and that motion was for the project to find the parking it needs somewhere within the boundaries of the Zionsville Architectural Review Committee's reach, if you will, of their program, certainly to only, if nothing else, offer flexibility to the project over the years to provide for its parking at places that may not exist today. Again, certainly staff will focus on the Plan Commission's review, and certainly staff is supportive of the petition as it's been filed. Certainly speaks to the number of items that are germane to the project itself. Again, staff is supportive of the petition as it's been filed, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
All right, thank you, Wayne. Does anybody have any questions for Wayne now? I would ask Wayne, and this is kind of related to the whole parking issue. When we have items that come before us, such as development plans or something for a change of use of a building or potentially similar usage, is there a way that we could established in the ordinance, they have to meet new parking guidelines that automatically get grandfathered in, subject to the prior use.
Certainly, the ordinance as it's structured has language regarding development standards and how those exist, and certainly how those are carried forward by an individual piece of property. Certainly, in the case of the tea room, you saw a project where the restaurant indeed closed. I believe it was December, early 2021, and certainly the next project almost instantaneously started to move forward with seeking those entitlements. And so certainly the ordinance speaks to, I think it's a 6-month window where if a development standard is not utilized, that you do give up that deviation.
Okay.
But at the same time, in Indiana, there's vested rights. Certainly the project, other projects continue to move forward and seek entitlements, relying upon those non-conforming standards. I know Mr. Rabinowitz has spoken to how this particular building has been vacant for 6 years. But in essence, actually, the family did rely on it to facilitate the Nancy Noel brand and gallery. Maybe not open to the public every day of the week, but certainly it did facilitate the business mission for the property or for the entity itself. So in essence, we walk through each property and talk through each idea as it comes in. Certainly some properties have zoning letters that we write speaking to those entitlements and speaking to this non-conforming status and how those things do change. This particular property has a number of previous variances and or development plan approvals it has secured. So this property is a little different. And then certainly the occupancy of any building is, while the space may yield a certain number of opportunities for humans to be within the space, those humans also have to exit the space and certainly have to adhere to a life safety plan. So certainly the math may say one thing on how many people you could put into a space, either fixed seating, standing, or whatever the case may be. But the exit plan also has to then mathematically support that number of people, hence where you land at 49, 75, a different number of people in a space versus what could be in there without any seating. So these are all calculations and conversations we have with each individual petitioner, each individual party that seeks information from us. Probably a longer answer than what you may have been looking for. And again, staff is supportive.
So to that point, I was surprised that Tipsy Mermaid did not have a life safety plan because it would have quantified the number of occupants that they were legally allowed to have, which would have helped in our conversation. And I don't know if there's a way to require that projects coming before Plan Commission do submit a life safety plan, because we don't see one for Cohatch either. But that uses code to determine and show, here's how many occupants that our space can legally support. Now, they may not have it that full, but that's how many it can support. And then, Larry would be able to then, have a number that they've determined to better challenge. And I don't know if that's something that we can start to require, but it's certainly a missing piece of the puzzle that is helpful information that would, I feel like, help us in these conversations.
Well, certainly the ordinance speaks to the minimum standards as what entitles a party to solicit and file with the Plan Commission. Certainly we have a number of items that we let petitioners know. Here's additional items that are really going to be helpful in this conversation. And we can certainly include the life safety plan. I mean, I can certainly say that some petitioners have submitted that.
Yeah.
Maybe without much thought. It's a sheet in the series.
I mean, it's required for their state submission. They need it anyway, so they might as well share it.
Duly noted.
And I think, relative to parking, it'd be nice to see Zionsville develop a requirement, like a lot of municipalities do with sidewalks, that if you're in an area that maybe doesn't have sidewalks yet, but you're doing a new building, you can either put your sidewalk in or you can pay into a fund. What opportunities are there to say, okay, so you need 40 parking spaces and you can't realistically get that, you can get 10, then you need to pay into a bank at $10,000 per space that ultimately goes to fund the garage. Because there needs to be a mechanism to do that. And that's one way to do that, because we are seeing a lot of these projects be under parked. Now, if you had enough parking spaces for all these buildings, they wouldn't all be used at the same time. So you'd actually have more parking spaces than you collectively need, but there would at least be a mechanism in place to fund that. So.
I would agree. So, all right, so let's go back to the matter at hand so they can get out of here.
Oh, yeah.
Am I allowed to remake my motion?
Would someone like to make a motion on this one?
All right, I'll try this round two here. I move that docket number 2021-19-DP to permit a building renovation and building additions on a 0.25 acre parcel located in the Village Business District, BBD, be approved based on the findings in the staff report and the staff recommendations, submitted findings of fact, and subject to resolution of outstanding review items identified by the engineering review letter in Exhibit 4 of the staff report.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any further discussion? All in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed by nay. Motion carries 7-0, and appreciate you listening to our banter.
Thank you.
When you were bringing up about the parking space, I was thinking, is there such thing as a parking impact fee, such as there's a road impact fee?
Yeah.
I don't know.
It is feasible to do that, to say basically any offset gets paid into a pool, and, a surface parking spot's $3,500 roughly. Parking garage space is somewhere in the magnitude of $25,000 to $30,000.
Yeah.
So, you just need to pick a number, and then while that may not solve the immediate parking problem, it certainly gives you a quicker mechanism to get a garage or some other system in place financially.
Wayne, quickly, how would Zionsville go about potentially implementing such a fee?
Well, certainly it would be something that would be an ordinance, certainly take public conversation. Certainly the town already has a different types of impact fee on the books, so to speak. So certainly you could mirror those ordinances to give you that structure. Certainly I would think that between the Zionsville Gateway area conversation and the other activities that are currently underway, and certainly those public conversations that accompany those, I think this is certainly a very, very unique time to explore that specific thought as a part of that public dialogue.
Yeah, because even if the Gateway project or those other projects identify a garage, having at least some mechanism to help offset the cost of that by the businesses that are incurring the need seems to be a logical way to make that work.
When we get caught in the middle, everybody wants to see some improvements and they want to see stuff in the village, but then there's no parking, and parking's expensive.
And lands at a premium.
I think we ought to get a meter made. Somebody in a golf cart, little van. They
A
drive around,
little piece
count
of chalk,
tires.
go around, check the tires.
If you put that out, there'd be.
You could do a 2-hour limit.
We get antique meters.
Yeah, 2-hour limit
At the village.
in some areas.
If we didn't put meters, we could put a 2-hour limit. I mean, we can't, but somebody could.
Okay.
I mean, we adjourn.
All right.
Second.
We're adjourned.
Hey, Miss Mary? Yeah.